How's it going? Motor City Miner here, coming at you from the farm. And that's right, you can see we are running 6 full hash boards on the K10 SuperScalars finally. So got those units in. It was They were pretty easy to work with, other than the time difference between where I live and they are. Um, kind of slowed down a little bit the troubleshooting and communication, but did get those in, and it's working fine. So now that I got them all working, I figure it is time to actually do a full how-to on these units. So we're going to hop on over to the computer, and this how-to is essentially going to be, as long as you got a fully working unit, what you should expect, what you can expect. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of different factors here, but I'll try and at least do the basic how-to, and some things I've learned along the way with these units. So yeah, we're gonna hop on over to the computer and kind of go through that whole setup process. All right, guys. So we're in the computer now, and I'm gonna first talk about the 3 things you'll need. So there's 3 things that you should receive from either your reseller or directly from SuperScalar. Um, Definitely reach out to either. You'll want the full, software package for these things. As I said, it's not. There's multiple things you'll need, so definitely make sure you get those. I will put a link down below though as well. So these are the links. I got 3 pages open here. Um, that are essentially all the tools you will need for your K10 Superscaler. These are what was given to me, and you'll want to use these. These are the latest and greatest. Um, so we're on version 1.05 for the Quick Start Guide. We're on version 020358 for the Manager tool, and then firmware package. We are on the 2024 0416 firmware package. So those are the latest as of today. Today is February 4th. So you're going to definitely want those. Uh, and that's mainly because um, if you remember right, uh, the old firmware, you would have to change the firmware every time you wanted to mine a different algorithm. So this newest firmware package and newest quick start guide and everything details how to utilize the new firmware to just switch between algos without having to change your firmware or anything like that. So definitely use the links down below to download the latest. This is what you'll want to use going forward. No reason to use the old stuff anymore. This stuff works great. So quickly jumping through the 3 files, like I said, we've got this quick start guide, which is mostly in English. There's a couple images and stuff that have some Chinese left, but for the most part, pretty straightforward stuff in here. At this point, it's very detailed. It's like 28 pages or something like that. We'll definitely go through this as we go through each step. And then, obviously, you also want to download the new Manager tool. Like I said, this is the new number here, the 020358. The new firmware, which is in this new release package, will not work on anything but this new Manager tool. So again, just like disregard everything you got prior, only use the new stuff going forward. Links down below. So obviously, I have an X1 unit, as you guys have seen in my prior videos, but I will put the links down below for both the K10G1 and the K10X as well. So down below, all your different files. No matter what unit you have, you'll be using obviously the same quick start guide and the same Manager tool. It's just the actual firmware packages and algorithm burning files that'll be different. So use the proper one down below. But yeah, so like I said, quick start guide we kind of went through, and yeah, kind of went through all this. So we're gonna hop on over. I have a SuperScalar folder, so you can see, they'll come in as a WinRAR file. You can just download WinRAR to extract those or however you want. Um, yeah, full K10 quick start guide. Uh, so this is the new tool folder. Only thing in here that really matters is this application file here, 2358. Everything else, won't need to touch. And then in the release package folder, you're going to see a firmware and image folder. The firmware folder is the new firmware for um, the algorithm switching so that you don't have to. There used to be like a whole bunch of folders in here, but now there's just this one, this S212A version 2. Um, in the image folder is going to be all your different supported algorithms. They have removed Caspa because, well, it's just super unprofitable and minimal yield on any type of FPGA. So they have removed that. So I assume it's just fully removed, but who knows? But you can see we have Elf, Ironfish, which will be changing here in a while to Fish Hash, Carlson, and RXD. Um, and always keep in touch with your reseller and SuperScalar. Reach out at support at superscalar.io for any new releases. Um, I would recommend being in their Discord so you know if there's any new algorithms coming out and to make those requests. So once you got all this stuff downloaded and unzipped, you're going to go into the Manager tool folder. You're going to click on the application. This is all going to look very, very similar. There are a couple different things and a couple improvements they made, so that's really nice to see. First, in the drop-down, you're going to select your K10. You will see that the K11 is still here and the K9. Those were in the prior version. Again, I don't believe you can get either of those publicly. K9 is super old, so you would have wanted it anyway. K11, I believe it's releasing later this spring. And now you'll see in this new firmware a K10.3. So what I've heard on this one is it's essentially a smaller, smaller hash rate, smaller performance K10. That's a little more platable cost-wise. Again, not much details on it yet, but sounds like maybe 2/3 the hash rate and power consumption, and maybe like $1,000 to $1,500 cheaper. Again, I have a K10, and most of you that are watching this are coming for the K10 how-to, so you can select K10, press OK. Everything else can stay the same, and you'll be greeted by the familiar Manager tool UI that you've seen in the past. There have been some improvements and cleanups, so as you can see, there is a lot less Chinese left, so most of these things have been properly actually noted in English now. Obviously, the name of the tool has not. And as you go through these different tabs, you'll see that that's pretty consistent across the board, that there is a lot less Chinese found throughout in the English version, which again, the download link below is for the English version. There are a couple spots where you will still see Chinese, so in the IP change, which you don't really need to use. Typically, the system command also still has some Chinese. And I think that's it, to be honest. Oh, no, there's still this random button here. That's kind of funny that they fixed all the buttons except one. The other thing I have noticed is that a lot of the pop-ups, so a lot of these buttons will cause pop-up menus, and those will still have some Chinese, such as, that's an example here. When I click on remote control, you can see that there are some Chinese. But they're definitely getting there. A lot of the things you will now typically be using are now in English properly, so that's nice to see some improvements, and hopefully they continue on that with that. So yeah, that's kind of the new interface. There's a bunch of other things that we'll see once we load up my units here. Another main thing is that's different between this and prior versions is the algorithm switchability. So that's going to be in your pool set tab here. And you can see you can select all your different algos. Now, it looks like you can still select Caspa, so I guess if you had downloaded the bitstream prior, you could probably still utilize it and burn it to your FPGA. But again, it doesn't come with the current package. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so essentially, this is where you'll do your switching, which we'll get to later in the video. So once you get this open, the first thing you're going to want to do is scan for machines. Now, it should automatically... All right, so on the first run, it'll likely come up with this. you want to allow it on whatever type of network you're currently on. So mine is a private network, but if you have yours set as a public network, you want to select that. But just want to select allow access, rescan for machines, and there you go. You can see my two superscalars have popped up. Now you'll see there's no information. So to get information showing, you want to select all, or you can select it here individually if you want, and press Startup Status. And it'll slowly start populating all this information. And you will see that this now says stop status in English, so that's great. We're going to make this a little bigger for you guys. I don't like going to full screen for this because then you lose some ability to expand and contract columns. It seems to just be like an issue with that. And you can see here in the information, a lot of it is now fully in English. There are a couple issues still, like errors are still populated in Chinese. And there'll be a couple other things as we go through this that you'll see that are still in Chinese. You'll see that right now. You'll want to keep, if I turn off, this is very important, if I turn off this checkmark, so unselect all, and say I just select this one, the other one will no longer update its data. So the compute hash rate is only updating for the one you have selected. So just something to keep in mind, that if you actually want to see your stats live, you will have to have both these checked. The reason I bring this up is because when you go into other facets, you don't want them both checked, unless you're trying to set them both the same. But like you'll see that it carried over what you selected automatically. So always make sure that what is selected is what you actually want to be working on. Very, very important. I tend to, after I do that initial scan machine and select all, I tend to turn it off, to be honest. That way, whenever I go to whatever screen, it forces me to make sure that I am working on what unit I'm on. So, with that in mind, right now we'll keep these both checked just so the data is populating live. So we can talk about a few things. So right now, I've already moved one of my machines to RxD. I plan to mine RxD on FPGA until the RxD habit, which is a couple months out. That's just my strategy. You do you. This one, so from the factory, these K10 units in my experience have been coming with ELF as their base unit. So base install is what they've had. I imagine yours would probably all be the same, and I'll imagine they'll come with the old firmware. So you can see in here that, so this one unit I already did and updated. I am running the updated firmware that allows for quick algorithm switching. This unit I have not. Now, that is mostly because I want to show you guys, obviously, how this works. So when you get it, I assume, at least for a little while, you'll probably not be getting units that are delivered with this S2112 firmware that, again, allows for algorithm switching. So we're going to go through that whole process. Another nice thing about this new Manager tool is it does have more information. So this is not relevant to what firmware version you're specifically using. So, for example, this unit's still running the old firmware. I can click on this. It'll pop up this menu that's unfortunately still in Chinese. Kind of a good example of what I meant by all the pop-ups are still in Chinese. But this button here is kind of your chip stats and everything like that. So you click on this, another pop-up with more headers, but you can see that they've added this new column in this Manager tool that now reads out the chip temps. So really nice to see that you can now see that information. Before you could just see the board temps, but as you can see, this is good information to have because my board temps look fine. But my chip temp, it looks like we have a couple of units, mainly this chip 1 and maybe chip 12, that are a little on the warm side, a lot warmer than I would like. So they might need to get repasted, especially this 93, that's real high. But it is nice to have this in the information now. Hopefully moving to RxD on this machine will drop that temperature so I don't have to immediately worry about pasting it, but we will see. Um, so that's kind of updates in this new manager tool. Again, some housekeeping things, still a few more things that need to be changed to Chinese or to English from Chinese, but it's getting there. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna unselect it and just select our one that we want to work on. Again, make sure select all is not selected unless you're intending to do this to all units at the same time, which I still wouldn't recommend. Um, I never really trust batch updates, but that's just me. So as you can see, like I said, this unit is still running the old firmware where you had to change the firmware every time you wanted to run a different algorithm. I purposely chose to save this machine for this demonstration because this is the machine I put the new hash boards in. That typically the hash boards are also only coming with a lithium already pre-programmed into the SD card. Um, that may or may not change in the future. I'm not really sure. But right now, like I said, it seems like units are still shipping with the lithium firmware installed, not the new Algo switching firmware. And the boards are shipping with the lithium um, algorithm installed, but none of the others. So that's why I thought this would be a good one, whereas this one unit I already had installed a whole bunch of different algorithms. Because even when you update to this new firmware, the 212A version 2, if you had previously burned multiple algorithms to your hash boards, it retains those. So when I upgraded this unit, I had already mined RxD and Lithium, and it already allows me to switch between them without having to burn an algorithm. But I want to go through that whole process, so that's why we've chosen this one. So what are you going to do? So if everything went well and you got a unit that's fully capable and working, no issues, like I said, do the scan machine. It'll pop up here. You'll want to select it individually. Start, you know, start the status, stop the status, whatever you want. Show that, and it should just start mining. Now, if it does not start mining, it could be because of either the pool that they had set is no longer applicable to where you are, or cannot connect from where you are, or that's really the only reason, other than you've got a bad machine, which at that point that's a whole different process. That's not the point of this video. This point of the video is how to skip mining and how to update your firmware and burn algorithms so that you can mine an Algo switch on the K10. So essentially, what you're going to want to do is the first thing you're going to want to do is update the firmware. So usually when these things start up, it'll do like a whole process here, and it says this in this package. All right, so here's kind of the rundown. In section 2.4 in the quick start guide, it kind of talks about what all these different things mean. And it's that column that you're really going to want to pay attention to, the minor column. When these first turn on, the first thing it's going to do for 4 to 5 minutes is verify the information, the data on the SD cards on each hash board. As shown in my prior video, there's 2 SD cards per board. You cannot do anything during this process. Just let it do its thing. Just wait for that to go on, and you'll know that because it'll say there's like a little SD where my cursor is. That's what matters. Now, after checking for SD data, a couple different things may happen. It may turn to loading, which means it has the right data. So, like I said, if you get a unit that has the lithium firmware on it, it's probably already going to have those hash boards to have the lithium Algo on them as well. So it should just move into this loading phase, which takes another 10 to 12 minutes. And then after those 10 to 12 minutes, it'll say mining, because it has indeed started mining, and it's probably mining to SuperScalar's pool and wallet address. Now, if for some reason during any of these steps something goes wrong, it's going to change to stopping. So that just means there's an error. You don't really know what it is. And then the final status that you'll ever see in that column is, for programming or burning the algorithm, which we'll get to later. So we're going to assume that you got a good unit. Everything starts up fine. It goes through all those things, the SD, loading, and then it starts mining. When it starts actually mining or stopping, that is the only time you can actually do anything. You do not want to change any settings or do any process during these first two steps. You want to wait for it to either start mining or error out and stop. Very important. So we're going to assume you got through everything and it got to either mining or stopping. Now it's when you can finally update the firmware, and you're releasing firmware to the new all Algo firmware. In this specific case, first step you're going to want to do is obviously select your unit, go to update and set, and then you're going to go to this firmware update column here. You're going to make sure that your proper unit is selected over here. We're going to press browse. You're going to go to wherever you download your information is downloaded. Go to our downloads folder. And our K10X1 release package. Again, you may have a G1 or just an X. And then you're going to go to the firmware folder, and you're going to select that subfolder, the 212A version 2. Now, this is a folder selector. You're not going to select any of the subfiles. You're just selecting the whole folder. So you select that whole folder, and then you press Start Update. It's going to have this pop-up, which is in Chinese. That's fine. Just press OK. And you're going to sit here and wait until this status updates. Do not do anything. Don't. You have to be patient with this machine. Everything with FPGAs takes a lot longer than ASICs or GPUs. Great, so we got this message. If it looked exactly like this, and you got this status here that looked exactly like this, means you're good to go. So you press OK. All right. So we're going to now hop back to our main page. We're going to click on this again. These aren't going to update unless they're checked. So if you check on it, that's when it'll start updating. So you'll see that it has restarted the miner, is doing its thing. Don't know what this means in Chinese, but the manager is restarting. So we're going to sit here for a few minutes until the unit reboots. All right, so you'll see that it has updated. We are running the new firmware. It is stopping. This is all completely normal up to this point. There's no reason to do anything. We're just going to let it keep on doing things for a little while. All right, there we go. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This minor state with all this Chinese in front of and behind SD means it is reading the SD card data. Now, since this is assuming that your machine was properly working and therefore mining already, and mining, whether it's a lithium or your unit comes with something else pre-installed, it doesn't really matter. Essentially, you're going to have to let it get all the way back to mining again on this new firmware. So, mine should take about 15 minutes here to fully get through the whole process. Like I said, 4 to 5 minutes for the SD read, another 10 minutes to actually start mining. So we're going to sit here and wait until it's mining, and then we'll go through the process of algorithm switching and burning. All right, so if you just notice our miner state changed to loading here, so it has successfully read the SD data and hasn't given an error, and that is because it's still, even though this was a firmware upgrade, it was mining ELF prior, and it's still mining ELF. We haven't gone through the actual process of changing Algo, so as long as it was working before, it should easily get to this step. This will be a little different once we start trying other algorithms, which we'll get into later. So this loading phase, like I said, typically takes 7 to 10 minutes. So we'll sit here a little longer until it says mining, and that's when you can then start changing settings again. All right, so it's right around that 13-minute mark. You can see that our chip count is now starting to rise from 0. You can see that some of this information is starting to populate. So that just means that we are almost done loading our algo. Hopefully we get to 12 here. There we go, 12 chips. We're mining. Image version, this is for your algo image version. Computations, we use your mega hash or hashing away. Everything's looking good. So like I said, this is just essentially, after you do the firmware update, it will just mine what you were already mining with the unit. But yeah, everything seems to have gone well. So next step is to actually go through the process of switching algos. And you're like, all right, well, how do I burn algos if I haven't done them before? So that's the thing. Like, if you have done it before, as I mentioned, on this unit, I had already mined RxD prior, so both the Lithium and RxD algo images were already on the hash boards. You could just freely switch. But we're going to assume you got a brand new unit and it only has one thing on it, and that's probably ELF because that's what they've been shipping. So how to start the process of switching to another algo. And this is very important. You do not want to burn any other algo until you do a couple things. Very, very important. First, I highly recommend you move from mining to stopping. So to do that, you will want to select the unit you're actually working on, select remote control, press stop run, and press OK. Here we go. It should stop mining here in a moment. There we go. It says it's stopping. Now remember, you can only change settings while it's mining or stopping. I prefer to change settings while it's stopping, but again, that's just me. But especially for things such as what we're about to do, is that whenever you're changing an algo, you have to change the frequency beforehand. So, as you saw earlier when I clicked on our lithium miner, or unit that came with a lithium, it will have all the settings for a lithium, which is 350. I don't know why one of these is 330, but it should all be 350. And then in this booklet they give you, they do have recommended values for everything. So what you're going to want to do once you've stopped your mining is you're going to want to change the frequency to what you're going to be mining. Before you burn the algo or do anything else, you want to change the frequency. So I'm going to be switching to RxD in this example. You know, if you pick Caspa, well, you wouldn't pick Caspa. If you pick Ironfish, you know, you would change to what they're saying here under the frequency section. And they have it for each of the units. So this is a G1, X1, and X. So in my case, I'm running X1 and RxD. They recommend a 300 frequency. All right. So we're going to do that step first. How to change the frequency. So we're going to go to update and set. You're going to make sure the unit you're actually trying to change is here. You're going to go to the adaptive frequency here. Not any of these other ones, just the adaptive frequency. You're going to set this value to what they have recommended for the algo you're going to be switching to. So in this case, RxD 300, press set. You're going to get an OK, and that's it. For the frequency setting, there will never be a status update here, unfortunately. So the only way to know if it went through is to go back to your machine page, click your machine, double click on it, wait for this all to pop up. And click on that, and you can see they have indeed switched all the 300, except for this one that seems to be stuck at 330. Huh. Okay, so they did tell me how to get around this, because as you can see, you can't change it for individual chip. It's for all the chips. So I guess this is a good thing to go through. So if for some reason not all your chips are updating, like there's like one at an odd value. You have to switch to that odd value's frequency so that they all have the same, and then you should be able to switch out of it. So let's go through this. It's kind of funny. It started back up mining again. It's mining at the lesser frequency, and that's fine. You really wouldn't want to do that when you're going higher. So again, it's always best to just stop it. I think it restarted because I changed the frequency, which causes the miner to restart. But again, just make sure it's stopped while you're changing the frequency, in my opinion. So we're going to go back here. We're going to go to 330 now because there's that one oddball board at 330. Make sure the right one rig is set as the active rig that you're changing. It should be 330. We go back to our machine data. They should now all say 330. Hopefully. Again, it's kind of a clunky interface, but once you do all this like once, you kind of just understand how it works. So they're all at 330. So now when I go back to that main page for updating and press 300, it should work. And I'd say it should. Oh, I was already back. See, I didn't check the check mark for the unit I'm trying to do. So make sure you do that. Always make sure check mark is checked for the unit you're trying to adjust. So I should have gone through now. We will double check here. There we go. Now they're all 330. So that's how, if one of the chips is at, for some reason, at a wrong frequency compared to the others, you'll essentially have to change all the chips to that wrong frequency so you can then change them all out, because the manager tool essentially only changes all the chips for the most used value. So say you had 3 chips that were at 330 and all the rest were at 350. It's going to change the 9 chips that are at 350 and leave the 3 at 330 alone. I don't know why it does this. It should just change them all, but the workaround that they told me is to essentially change the higher mounted chips, so the one that are more frequently the same, to the lower amount of chips that have a different frequency, and then you should be able to switch them all. Anyway, so that's what we did there. So back to this, it's going to start up again because I set new frequencies again. Do remote control, stop, run. That's what we do. All right, so we're stopped. Great. So now that we've got the frequency for the algorithm we want to be mining, you now go to this pool set page. You're going to select Algo. So it was doing, well, you're going to select your unit first. Very, very important. I'm going to say that 1,000 times in this video. So my 237 unit was running ELF. So now we're going to do RxD. And you're going to fill out your pool info, your sub account, and the pool parameter consists. You can put backup pools, whatever, it doesn't really matter. This is new in this version of the firmware. So you can see the start set, read parameter, and this button here. And so the read parameter is new, and same with the dialog box here. So what I can actually do is I can select my top unit, which I know is running RX. Press read parameter, and it'll actually throw up all the information it has. Actually, it threw it up for the 237. I think that's because that's what was checked on this page. Again, the check marks are really, really. This is where it matters the most, right here on the main machine info page and select. That's where you want to make sure before you do any other tab, you select the unit you want. So now if I go to the pool set and now press read parameter, there we go. It is reading my 110 data. Great. Now I can quickly just copy, paste this information into this for the other unit. Again, I'm going to here, I'm going to select that unit, I'm going go here, see that it's already been checked. We're going to go stratum, throw that in the pool. We're going to go address, throw that in the pool. Now they say in their uh, how-to guide here that you can't actually put your own worker name, that it only does the IP address. I've found that that isn't actually the case. So let me see where they say it. I can't remember. All right, so in section 4.1.2 and 4.1.3, it talks about what we're studying right now in this thing. So it says, the main pool has to have the stratum plus TCP in the port. Like it has to have all that. It will not work if you don't put stratum plus TCP or SSL, whatever you use. For the sub account name, it says to just put your wallet address. It says do not set the worker name in this box. By default, the worker is configured as the current miner IP suffix. So in this case, it should be, 0.1010 or whatever. I have found that that is not true. That you can, in fact, actually set a worker name. It will still append the, this amount of your IP address. But what I have found is that if you put a period here, I have been calling mine by their serial numbers. So this is going to be a K10. This unit specifically, the last two of the serial number is 68, whereas by the other unit, that's 10.10, is 88. If I put a period and then the worker name I want to distinguish this unit, it will in fact work. It will just after that 68 then append to the worker name the last 5 of the IP address as well. So poolside, this currently will show K1068 11010 or whatever. Or sorry, that's if it was this. It'll show K1068 10237. I'm fine with that. I just need something to know so when there's a problem, what unit I need to actually go over to on the record. So that's what I've been doing. Not saying you should or shouldn't. So once you do that, RxD stratum, put in your worker name, which is your wallet address or whatever it is for whatever pool you're using. And then if you do want to work them in, put it after a period, knowing that it will just append 5 more digits afterward, or the last 5 of the address. Leave this as default. Again, make sure all the right things are selected, and then press Start Set. This is fine, normal. Press OK. That's completely normal as well. Great. So now we're going to go back to the machine. Now, it will restart the device. So that is what's happening here. Again, make sure it's checkmarked to make sure that you are getting accurate updates from the unit. If it's not checkmarked, even if you had already pressed start status, it will not show you anything. So we're going to sit here for a little bit. It's going to stop. Eventually, it's going to start reading those SD cards. Now, in theory, these SD cards do not have RxD previously installed. So then we'll go through the burning process. So it's going to check the SD cards. This will take, like I said, a few minutes. Usually 3 to 5 minutes. And it should actually give us an error this time. But you will see that it has changed Algo here to RxD. And I guess while we're here, this is a good example. So you can see how with my other unit, the worker name actually is K1088, 88 being the last 2 of the serial number, so I can distinguish it. And then it appended all that other info. All right, great. So it is indeed throwing errors. So you can see that it's saying that, and this says in Chinese, but essentially that hashboard 1 and 2, the information is not correct. And that's because these are the replacement boards. They only came with a lithium previous installs. Again, they may change that over time. I'm not really sure. But the point of this video is to show you how, if needed, to really change everything on the K10. So you don't want to do anything yet, though. Let it keep saying this minor state SD is being read. Again, don't do anything during this or loading, it is going to screw up your machine. Most likely. You may get lucky, but it is highly unadvisable to change settings while it's reading the SD card or while it is loading the miner. So we're going to keep on waiting, and eventually this should fully air out after a little bit here. It should not go into loading. And just to prove that I'm not being crazy, it says it right in the instructions. Do not perform any configuration or burning during loading algorithm data or the checking of the SD card data. And here it says need to switch algorithm. If the current algorithm is not the algorithm you need, please follow these steps. So that's what we're doing right now. And essentially, these are the errors I got. 1 and 2 do not have the proper data. 3 does have the proper data because it is, in fact, one of my older boards that I've had and has RxD. So essentially, during this, it's just verifying if the data exists. So if it does not exist, that's when you have to do the burning, which again is chapter 7, I believe, in here. This book is going to be your friend, okay? Plus my video. Book, video equals you should be good. But we're going to go through this process next. I am curious, since I have one board that is the correct board, what it's going to do. So it actually looks like it's going to try loading the Algo. So I'm going to have to wait a little longer. If you had a brand new unit and it only had a lithium and say you were switching to RxD, it would arrow out all 3 boards, and this should say stopping, which I think is what they depicted in their book here. Yeah, so in their book here, with all 3 boards, you can see 1, 2, and 3 having an image issue that it goes to stopping. Now, since I'm kind of in this weird place where I have 2 boards that don't have it and 1 that does, it's going to continue on to loading for me. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait a little longer because, again, should not change any configuration during loading. So we're going to skip ahead until this is done loading. It will probably mine on a single board. So I'm going to have to stop miner, and then we can get into burning on mine. But yours should immediately, if you have all 3 boards have never mined that algorithm before, it should immediately go after the SD checking to throwing an error for each board and then stopping. So just a little different that you'll see on your side probably. Again, the instructions kind of detail that as well. So we'll be back in about, I don't know, 8 more minutes or so when this is done loading, and then go through the burning process. All right, guys, so we stopped the miner here. We're going to have to burn the algo. So how do you do that? You're going to go to update, make sure the proper unit's selected. You're going to go to browse. You're going to find your folder you downloaded. Go to the release package, image, and then in my case, RxD. This time you're actually going to go all the way down to the image file. Select, everything looks okay, and then you're going to do algorithm burn. And press OK. Eventually you get a status update here. Do not leave this page until you get a status update. There we go. Okay, it has started the process. So if we go back over to the main page and have this updating, it should go through the cycle of burning this algorithm. All right, so you can see that it has started programming, which is great. This process normally takes a very long time. We're talking almost an hour. So we'll be back when it's done programming, or when it's close to done programming. So just going to take a quick break here until we get back. But this is what you're looking for, is essentially for it to move into this status, and that's how you know it's doing what it's supposed to do. All right, guys. So you can see that our programming just hit 100%. So we should get a restart here shortly. We should be back up in business with our RxD mining. So we'll sit here, sit tight, wait for this to finish. Normally it sits at 100% for a little while, at least in my experience. So just be patient. Everything with these machines is be patient. Just be patient. If you're not patient, it ain't gonna work. Every little thing takes a little while. So here we go. You can see that it is now restarting. So we should get up and running here in a moment. We'll let it do its thing. Hopefully all the burning went successfully. I have in the past on this unit had like a board not take properly, and then you just have to reflash or not. I guess flashing's kind of weird, but reburn, flash, whatever. The algorithm. So hopefully this works here though. So we'll see here in a moment. Come on, reload. All right, so it is stopping. Again, that's pretty normal for when it right boots up, and then it'll switch into. Essentially, it's just making sure that no other operations are happening, and then it moves into the SD card track. We should get into that here in a moment. Usually, I'd say like give it a minute upon startup to start moving into SD. Check maybe a little longer, and if it doesn't, if it just stays in stopping, then usually that means something's wrong. But at least in the stopping stages, when you can do things and fix things, so that's always good. But yep, there it goes. Just moved into the SD check data phase. So in a couple minutes here, like I said, normally 3 to 5 minutes, we'll get our results. Hopefully, those results say that we have 3 boards, all with RxD bit streams. Find out shortly, though. All right, guys, so we have successfully moved into the loading phase. No errors were thrown, so I'm going to guess that our burning of the algorithm was successful to all 3 boards. Well, I guess 2. One of them already had RxD installed. But yeah, in about probably another 7 to 10 minutes, we should be mining RxD on this K10 as well. So we'll check back in once we get there. All right. So it looks like our data is starting to populate, so that's great. Image version looks like 12 chips. You know, our worker name, everything's starting to populate. There goes our hash rate too. So looks like we are in business, guys. This looks like this was successful. I can't really demonstrate it, but say for whatever reason, after you make a change, whether it's burning the algorithm, updating the pool, or something like that, say you did that, and you go here, and it's just kind of stuck. Um, what you would do is you'd select whatever unit it is. So say it was the unit we just did. You would go to remote control after you have it selected, and then you would just want to press allow load algorithm. Press OK. And it'll reboot it, reboot the Raspberry Pi these run off, and should get you to where you want to go. It usually doesn't require it to reload the whole thing, like, all 12, 15 minutes. Normally it's just normally it's a lot quicker. We'll see here if it is. Yep, so you can see that that cycled a lot faster. We're already getting our 12 chips back online and our image version. So if you do ever get stuck for whatever reason, that's what you would do. There it goes. About maybe a minute total to restart. Um, I've had sometimes, like when I've started a machine, like only 8 of the 12 chips turn on for some reason, like a certain hash board just didn't register properly during the boot cycle, and that's the way you can rectify that. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think there's much else to talk about in here. Again, this is the whole process of where to download the latest and greatest firmware, how-to guides from them, um, and the whole firmware package. Links are down below and labeled per the different type, whether you have a G1 unit, X1, or an X. So use the proper links down below. Again, I download as soon as you can. I don't know how long these links are active for. I'm not in control of them. They are straight from the manufacturer. So better to have them than not have them. And then obviously you can update to the newest firmware as we showed once you have the new manager tool, the 2.3.58. And then once you have the new firmware installed as shown prior, you can then burn any algorithms or swap at command to different algorithms just by going to the tool set and changing your dropdown. So, and I think kind of briefly mentioned this bottom button, the only button that isn't in a pop-up that is still Chinese, um, just erases what's already in this dialog box from prior. So, you can just clear that out, read parameters, and I don't know why it's only, I think you have to select it per, say we do 10, and that will do 237. Nope, it doesn't want to do it. Might be how I had to select the view. So view parameter, there we go, 237. Great. And then you can come back and do another one, view parameter. There we go, that's both of them. So this just removes that information. But yeah, just use this nice drop down we've added. Again, none of this is available in the old tool, so you will have to use this latest tool to do any of this updates. But yeah, so if you have any other questions, concerns, or things like that, having issues with your K10, comment down below. Reach out to me on Discord or something, and I can try and walk you through it as best I can. Again, if you just get a bad board or something, there's not much I can do about that, and you'll know pretty quick with all the errors that are popping up in here. They get pretty lengthy. You'll have to work with your reseller and SuperScalar to get that replaced. But as long as everything's working, this guide should be pretty helpful. Along with their newest quick start guide, the version 1.0.5. So again, comment down below, like, subscribe, and that's all I got on my K10 how-to guide for today.